same time, if against all odds, queer people also manage to revel in our remarkable beauty and shamelessly take delight in the erotic power of our desires, especially our lust for a life abundantly shared with others, well then, that's not only countercultural, it's also joyfully and disruptively queer. Amen. Now, queer spirituality, that is earthy, sensuous, body-affirming, impassioned, justice-focused spirituality. Queer spirituality is the lens through which I want to think with you about some things happening in this merry month of June. First of all, I want us to think together about how same-sex couples in many places are now able to couple legally, thanks to the movement for marriage equality. And second, I want us to think about community and comprehensive social change in light of the fact that today, exactly today, marks the 44th anniversary of the Stonewall Rebellion and the birthing of the queer freedom movement. So how does the movement for the freedom to marry honor and reflect the best of Stonewall? And how does Stonewall prod us to demand more than inclusion and acceptance as our moral vision? Now, many in this room, myself included, have been working hard and continue to work hard to gain the legal right for same-sex couples to marry. Open and affirming congregations continue to be at the forefront of this remarkable movement and have laid much of the groundwork to speed things along. Without a doubt, achieving the freedom to marry is a great moral good, and we have cause to celebrate. But I'm also persuaded that while attaining marriage is good, marriage itself is not good enough when it comes to the justice agenda that cries out for attention. Justice as equal access to marriage is far too modest a change agenda for spirited queer people of faith. We must reclaim a much larger vision of justice that challenges oppression of every kind, puts an end to gender, race, class, and cultural marginalization, and seeks to transform persons and their communities, including their faith communities, so that all persons may experience both respect and a fair share of resources as their birthright. No exceptions made. Yes, there's much to celebrate about the movement for marriage equality in the U.S. and around the globe, but we've also had plenty of bad news to deal with in recent years. Just about marriage, the passage in 1996 of the Federal Defense of Marriage Act, 36 states with state laws or constitutional amendments that define marriage as exclusively between a man and a woman, and a series of 31 losses at the ballot box as we've tried to stop the marriage exclusion backlash. Historian John D'Amelio has not been alone in arguing that the campaign for marriage has been an unmitigated disaster. The battle, he says, to win marriage equality through the courts has done something that no other campaign or issue in our movement has done. It has created a vast body of new anti-gay law. And if that's not bad enough, as queer theorist Gail Rubin points out, sex laws are notoriously easy to pass, but once they're on the books, they are extremely difficult to dislodge. But then 2012 came along and we've had some breakthroughs, important breakthroughs. Minnesota defeated the opponents of marriage equality. and did an amazing job. Thank you so much, Minnesota. And then Maine and Maryland and Washington State acted to make civil marriage available to same-sex couples. Now, when I wrote this, I said today 12 states. Well, I need to correct that. Today, 13 states, as soon as California gets back online, plus the District of Columbia and 3 Native American tribes uphold marriage equality as the law of the land. 9 of those states have acted since 2009. Around the world, 15 countries allow same-sex couples to marry legally. 8 of those since 2010. And then only yesterday we heard these 2 historic U.S. Supreme Court rulings, one about a constitutional right to marry, unfortunately a more limited decision, but an important decision around Prop 8, and then the other decision about whether it's discriminatory, and yes it is, to deny federal benefits to legally married same-sex couples. Now, some analysts then dispute D'Amelio and Rubin's pessimism and argue, oh no, the tide has shifted. And so as evidence, they cite the fact that while back in 2001, a clear majority, 57% in fact, of Americans said they oppose same-sex marriage, a mere dozen years later, 2013, more than half of all Americans say they favor marriage equality. Only 43%. Wouldn't that be nice, 43? But it's only 43% opposed. So, you know, it's noticeable also where you find both the support and the opposition, how that breaks out by generation, by gender, by religion. The younger you are, the more likely you are to be in support. Women are more likely in favor than men. And when it comes to religion, the highest approval, 3 out of 4 is found where? Well, but first, 3 out of 4 is found among the rising number of folks who self-identify as nuns, N-O-N-E-S, those who claim no religious affiliation. Now, it's true while support among white and black Protestant evangelicals is higher today than it was in 2001, even there's good news, support among evangelicals lags far behind other religious groups, as you just were saying, especially Roman Catholics and white mainstream Protestants, where just over half approve of this change. What's even more remarkable is that nearly 3/4 of people surveyed, opponents as well as supporters, say legal recognition of same-sex marriage is inevitable. So even those who oppose this change know that eventually they're going to lose. So what's going on here? Well, for one thing, thanks to Stonewall and the courage of LGBTQ people everywhere to live our lives more openly, many more people now know us. And that firsthand knowledge is correlated with greater comfort with sexual diversity and with greater support for marriage equality. The Pew Research Center has verified that about 2/3 who say they know a lot of us how can they not like us? Those who know a lot of us favor same-sex marriage. And who's more likely then to have many LGBTQ friends and acquaintances? Well, go back. It's most likely those who are younger, more urban, more likely women than men, and less religious. Contrast that with just the 32% of people who say they don't know anyone who's gay or lesbian, and yet they support this change. Second, I think opposition to same-sex marriage remains quite substantial, and we need to understand that. And the major obstacle, you guessed it, is religion. Just under half of Americans report that they believe homosexuality is a sin, or that engaging in Homosexual behavior, whatever that means, is sinful. Gayness, they argue, is simply incompatible with morality, plus it goes against the Bible. So isn't it telling that only 10% of opponents cite any other reason than religious belief or the Bible to justify their disapproval? Religion is the obstacle. When it comes to sex and sexual justice, then there is ample evidence to show that the culture is far ahead of the church. Conservative religionists, and let's call them marriage traditionalists, are troubled to begin with that we're even having this conversation. They insist that by definition, marriage, if it's to be a valid marriage, requires gender difference. A man and a woman, of course. But the subtext here is far more important. And the subtext here is that marriage, if it's to be valid as a marriage, requires not only gender difference, but also gender inequality. Marriage is viewed as a gendered hierarchy in which male privilege and power are protected as natural and God-given. The institution of marriage is prized for the fact that it bolsters an entire social cultural edifice structured on the basis of unequal power and status. And their fear is, as marriage goes, so goes the social order. So here is racist, patriarchal Christianity speaking, even though its speech has been constrained from speaking out loud of women's inferiority or the inferiority of people of color and so forth. So it speaks in more modulated, hushed tones. And it uses code language like gender complementarity. But don't be fooled. Now, while it's certainly true that the religious rights agenda is to exclude same-sex couples from marriage, keeping us out is only part of their larger social project. After all, we are not very important to them. What's far more important on their agenda is to keep the heterosexual majority pinned in to an oppressive cultural paradigm of power and control.